Hey everybody, this is James. I'm back to make another video, this time at $1 and $2 no limit on full tilt. I've been playing for a little bit already, and now that I have a little bit of a better read, I think I'm going to see what I can do here. Okay, so very first hand I raise 3-6 suited under the gun. This guy can find a raise on a Jack 10-2 board. I'm just going to fold it. That's the type of board against strong players I would not c-bet. Well, I wouldn't have raised 3-6 suited under the gun if these were strong players, but in that spot I think it's okay because I had to go back to our other concept of continuing to pound guys. Okay, so this Closeto has limp folded his small blind like half a dozen times, so we feel okay. Sorry about that. We feel okay just raising any two and he open limps a small blind. Early on, my suspicions were coming in that play at this game would be very similar to play at 50 cent $1, even more similar than, or I should say much more similar to 50 cent $1 than 50 cent $1 was to 25 and 50 cents. And the reason being that the increase in 3-betting frequency when we moved up to that game was so much that, I mean, I suspect that these guys aren't going to be 3-betting so much more frequently than those guys were, and I was correct for the most part. I actually got on some better tables, I think, this time than I was in that game, which will put us into more value garnering situations than anything else. So this Speedy's been playing pretty weak and loose so far. When he open jams his turn, I expect him to have, there you go, a monster. Sadly for him, he gets sucked out on because he has been playing like garbage, and we want, no offense Speedy if you're there, but we really we wanted to be the ones to take him down. Closeto, I mean, he obviously sucked out in the first place, but Closeto's not the world's best player either, so we're fine against him. Queen 6 suited, not standard obviously, but I don't think these guys are going to 4-bet bluff me. I think Jujoke, whatever this guy is, fairly new to the table, hasn't seen me do anything silly yet, so I think we'll get a little bit of respect here. Clearly not a standard play, but we'll see what happens. My initial impression, as you see me isolating with the ace deuce on the left table, my initial impression is that I'm going to be able to ramp up the pre-flop aggression here, and that regulars are not going to know how to deal with me, so that is the assumption I will be basing my actions off of, and I will be seeing how people react. JK Nil, we've been in some pots with him. He beat us in like a setup hand with a flush over, or a full house over flush before. That was fairly interesting actually, but in that hand I was gonna bet once and reevaluate on the turn. He's not really the type of player I would want to fire off, like get into my 3-bet or 3-barreling bluffing routine against, just because he's certainly not going to fold a weak queen to 3-bets, and he's a guy we'd probably be better off just going for value for. But the first thing I would say is that those of you who are having success at the 50 cents and $1 tables, I think these games are now beyond your reach. You know, I can certainly see those of you playing $50 buy-in who are intimidated to move up to $100 buy-in. That might be warranted because those games, I think, were a lot more challenging, but these games are very similar to 50 cents a dollar. I mean, almost, I don't want to say identical, but they were pretty close. Okay, so we have ace queen. Ace queen 10 flop, very good for us. This guy has been showing a propensity to bet into a fair amount of flops. Obviously, we're crushed if he has king jack, but he can certainly have a pair in spades, ace 10, queen 10, gutter and spade draw. I think we have to get the rest in here. I'm not so sure he would be 3-betting all in with a total monster, so luckily for us we've been showing him some bluffs. No jack one time? Thank you. So we have been showing him some bluffs, and I think there we need to raise, even though a fair amount of his hands are ones that just want to make us fold right away. There's too many action killing cards. Like if that king came off on the turn there, we would have been smoked because he's not going to continue. He's not going to stack off when the king comes off. So I think fast playing there was very clearly the correct play, and it worked out for us this time. So we're going to make a note on him in one quick minute. So he checks back. He's going to lose this pot now. Let's see, he has a 4. Yeah. So we'll make a note. Certainly we'd love to have position on him. Bet 3-bet all in A60 on AQT SS board. Okay. So we'll save and exit. I think this guy's range is fairly weak. I'm just going to test him. 2-3 off is a terrible hand. The worst. But, you know, seems like an okay player, so I think I'm allowed to just test him early in the session and build up an aggressive image. Because now Quintus is the only guy who's been here since I started this session about 45 minutes ago. Like I said, when I was getting a feel. And Quintus I thought it was very interesting that I had hands on him. Those hands are not from this session. Those hands are from a previous session. And as I don't really play so much on full tilt, those are probably from like 5-10 or 3-6 games. Okay, so now we're deep with this guy. In position. These guys have not been out of line at all, so we're going to be isolating most hands and hoping to see some flops. Quintus hasn't been 3-betting us too much. You know, he is only, well, those stats may not be accurate for this game, but he's been pretty tight. So Jack 7 suited, we're not deep enough for me to call and show a profit. We're not, you know, if you were in the big blind or small blind, maybe I would consider a call. But in that spot, I just need to give it up, I think. But Jack 7 suited is not the greatest hand out of position to be calling raises with. 2-4 off, obviously it's a fold. I could have considered squeezing this guy too because we were only playing 3-handed that hand. If this guy raises, or if Razy Daisy raises, I think I'm just going to shoot it up here and start building up an aggressive image with those folks also. 8-5 suited, and we win. Great result. So far we see pre-flop aggression is really paying off against the regulars in this game. We're going to call 8-5 suited, hoping with the idea that we can occasionally make a disguise very strong hand if he is strong, and we can take the pot away on boards where it's appropriate to do so. That time, no chance. So we'll just give it up. Okay, with the ace-king off, I consider Razy Daisy to be a pretty straightforward player. So, so far, I'm just going to say he for all the players I play with, because I assume that most people that play online are boys. He has been pretty straightforward, so my plan was to bet this once and then to bet the next street also. Now I'm kind of in an interesting spot because the board doesn't seem so bluffy, and if I call, it's going to be hard for her to put another bet in on the turn. But whatever, man. We don't need to win every pot. J-Nil's not feeling too great. I call him just J-Nil because I think the K is silent, by the way, so if that confuses you, I apologize. Post dead under the gun. I think maybe feeling a little grumpy about the whole A6 off bet 3-bet debacle. We really want Closeto to come back. Closeto was our favorite player. Speedy was a close second, but now that he's busted, we kind of just need Closeto to come back. But it's certainly not impossible to win in games that are only regulars here. And I think oftentimes, like, people are pretty good at playing against fish, I think, in general, so it may be even more valuable to just focus on how to beat the regulars at these various stakes. So far, like I said, 3-betting frequency has been fairly similar. I haven't gotten in too many spots where I've been able to try out triple barrel bluffing, but that's just been because people have been either raising the flop or folding on the flop an awful lot. So that might be a difference that exists, because if people are raising a fair amount of flops and then folding when they miss, that would certainly be a big change from the other game I played. So we flop a total monster, second nuts against J-Nil. Fortunately, he doesn't bet out, which might mean he doesn't have a hand, but we'll bet anyway. We'll see what happens. Expecting to get calls from a lot of straight draws. We 3-bet him last time, and hopefully we can start making him think that we're getting out of line. Be a great result for us, but unfortunately he just folds. But that's okay, because we're going to keep pressuring him. Eventually we're going to have a good hand when he doesn't. So, and clearly we're just going to bet for value here. If he bets out, we're kind of put to an interesting decision, but he didn't. So we'll just bet. Kind of bet big, trying to represent a bluff. No way we can lose now. And he loses, so I don't want to look. So yeah, perfect. He had the ace with the open ender and wound up losing 6/10 of his stack. So, you know, we did well. Just keep betting when you make the nuts is one way to win. But I do like raising just like the suited kind of medium strength hands like Jack 7, because I'm not getting 3-bet very much by these guys, and they I can blow them off hands when I make a hand and they don't, and obviously I can get good value when I do make a good hand. So I mean, that was clearly just like a nice result for us. But okay, so on the other hand, we have ace jack. Quintus flat calls us pre-flop and then calls this flop. My plan here is to check, evaluate based on bet size, but initially it's going to be to check call the turn and check fold the river. I don't think he has a bigger ace than us, but it's possible that he's just protecting. We're getting an okay price to call that one. And not definitely a check fold, because the only available draw came in. If he bets now, we're probably just smoked. It's also possible he was slow playing a total monster on the flop. I think he would have 3-bet ace king, the way we've been playing. But an 8 is certainly a very big portion of his range. Not so interesting. Pretty obvious fold. I think it becomes more interesting if he would have just, or if the 8 didn't come off on the turn, like if the turn were a queen or something. I think the play there is possibly just to check again. I think the play there again is to check call once. But it becomes closer and it becomes more dependent on bet size. Ace 4 off is enough against this guy. He's been playing pretty tight. Not out of line. We have folded to him a little bit, and to his 3-bets. So this time, I'm going to feign a tank. We have an ace, obviously, which makes it, as I was saying, less likely for him to have an ace. It also means if he flat calls our bet, we can make an ace, which is nice. Think. 49 to go. We haven't been caught 4-bet bluffing on this table before, so if he jams, it's not so bad, because then we can kind of save our 4-bets for a monster next time, or continue to 4-bet. So now he calls, which kind of makes me think he has a monster. I flop a gutter with an overcard, which I think combined with the fact that a lot of the hands he would have had me dominated with, I have to fold this flop. I think I have to bet call, which is like kind of annoying, but I think it's just kind of the way the cookie crumbled this time. Possible I should have just jammed it. But that bet kind of makes it look like we want to call. So I think he did have like an ace queen or ace king hand there. So that hand worked out very nicely. We got a beautiful flop. Because oftentimes people will slow play their big hands. Like I just got totally owned by a friend of mine a few days ago because he just called the 4-bet pre-flop with aces, flopped the ace and slow played it, and I wound up stacking off the whole thing on a bluff with like 4s on an ace queen jack 2-2 board or something. So 6-7. Man, I kind of forgot Speedy was short. I was gonna say with Speedy in the big blind would be a no-brainer, but as he gets that short, he's probably playing like a tournament short stack strategy. But as I don't really care, man. If he jams, I'll just call. Whatever, dude. place my hand over the call, anticipating it. We're going to make it 11 with my ace-queen suited. Okay, so Quintus, who knows if he tilts or what. He's probably on multiple tables. He seems like a regular. Interesting. So I think this guy's a decent player. I'm going to call with my 9-7 suited in position. I think Quintus is going to fold, with the idea that maybe I can get you guys into to see an example of when I would use some creative means to take the pot away in the flop. Because I don't think that this guy's bad. Okay, so King 6-2 comes right off. Quintus is almost certainly on a pocket pair right now. Joke, whatever guy, either has like a big pair or ace king. Now he checks, which is annoying because I think if he would have bet, I would have called, which sounds like totally crazy, but I think it would have been right. See, now I can't tell if he's the type to be slow playing, in which case betting would be a big mistake, or the type that would like get spooked because he has jacks. Because I think most of his bluffs would continue. Like if you just had Jack 10 suited or something, I think he would bet that flop, which is why I would, like I said, think about calling it. We check it to Quintus. This is so annoying, man. Checks it again. The deuce is like such an annoying card because he can continue his slow playing ruse, thinking that if we checked once, we must have nothing. I think we just don't get to win this one. That's okay. I expect he's going to call. I don't think he could have checked twice with nothing, but I don't know. Possibly he jams it in. Call. I think he's on a slow play. I think we kind of dodged a bullet there. It's annoying. I want that ace-8 back. Wasn't thinking I would have squeezed. Dr. Pan and I have some squeezy history. So he did have queens. Okay. Kind of interesting. A bad bet, I think, from Quintus on the turn. Maybe not so bad. I guess he kind of protects a little bit. It wasn't such a big bet that he's committed, but I don't know. I think he needed to know that when people are bluffing pre-flop, if they're strong enough to bluff pre-flop, they're almost always going to be bluffing flops like that. So he was just basically just praying that Jujoki, or whatever this guy's name is, had Jujoki. He was just praying that Jujoki had ace queen. I think if he wanted to bet the turn, he could have thought about betting the river also. Sadly, Speedy manages to miss his 18 outer. But, those are the breaks when you're Speedy 0308 and you don't play so great. Clearly standard open, no action. It's fine though. So with that 9-7 suited defense, I was thinking, I think if an ace comes off and he starts that check-in routine, I know Quintus almost never has an ace. I think he almost always has exactly what he had, like some pocket pair. So I think I can have started my betting routine, hoping to get queens, or kings through jacks rather, to fold. Thinking that if since the ace is out, it's fairly unlikely that he has one. Queen Jack 4, I think I just got to bet once because I'm not going to be happy if I have to call bets later. I don't really stand to improve very often. I expect that to happen a fair amount, but betting 9 and 14, I lay myself a pretty good price. Top of my head, I think I need to have that bet work like 40% to show profit. And sometimes, of course, when called, I can improve to the best hand. So I don't think I can check back there because shorties like him are just going to try to bluff me off on the turn, and I can't call. Obviously, I don't have a bluff catcher in that spot, so I think just giving up sucks, but you got to do sometimes. Jack 9, none of my opponents have shown the ability to 3-bet lightly yet, so we'll continue to try to isolate J-Nil and get some pots heads up against him. And of course, if we can win 2.5 big blinds with our raise, if we won 2.5 blinds with our Jack 9 offsuit every time, we would all be billionaires. Maybe not, but we'd be close. So yeah, this session's been fairly interesting so far. I think we've seen a fair amount of weak tight play. It's kind of like people have been either weak tight or awful for the most part. An exception to that would be this Dr. Payhen. Seems to be a pretty thinking, decent player, so congratulations to him. I played with some players in the first 45 minutes that I played. I actually made a video for that too, but I don't know how great it is. But I did play with some players in that segment that were okay too. Give some props to Tony Romo 88 and Kef RM, played pretty well also. There was actually one spot. Well, it was funny because I sat down at this table and all of a sudden someone's typing in the chat box like, "James, is that you? Why are you playing so low?" And it was a cousin of a friend of mine who I did like a money swap with, cake for full tilt, so he knew my name. And of course I'm like, yeah, now he's totally blowing up my spot, saying all this stuff, and he's like, sign on Instant Messenger. So I sign on. I tell him I'm doing a video for Stacks Poker, and he's like, oh cool, send me the video, whatever. So now I'm thinking like maybe he's gonna make a play at me, or I don't know how he's gonna change his play. So right away I 3-bet 10-8 suited from the big blind. He just 4-bets to a committing size from the button. I feel stupid. I have to fold. I think he's making a play at me. Turns out he did have ace king. He told me afterwards, so that was cool to know. But then a little later he raises, and I'm on the button with ace queen off. Now there had been this short stack who had been squeezing a lot from the big blind, so my thought was I can just call here, get the short stack to squeeze us, and then I can just win his stack, or I can make a disguised hand if an ace comes off, because he's going to expect me to be 3-betting my decent aces. So sure enough, the flop short stack just folds, and the flop is ace 7-2 rainbow. He bets, and I just raise it up instantly, and he thinks for a while and then folds. And then afterwards he asked me, he's like, what do I do with king jack off on that ace 7-2 board, because I knew you were going to raise 100% of the time. And he's probably right. I think I was going to test him with just about any two, but my thinking with raising was he should know that I'm going to be testing with any two, so maybe he was getting probably a good price to just stick the rest in, figuring that I have nothing there a decent amount of time, which is true. So he wound up folding, but he was like, man, I wanted to reship it so bad. I knew you were bluffing, blah blah blah. And then I told him, hey, I actually had a hand, and he felt good, but I was like, I guess my read was right, but man, your play is so sick that you can do that. And possibly, but it just goes to show, like, deception plays will have big value against guys at these limits if they think you're a good player, because they don't think that they don't think he never expected me in a million years to have ace queen there. He thought I always had a bluff. So anyway, king 8 suited. This is one of those hands where, to go back to our semi-bluffing idea from the previous video, this guy did show us the 8-6. We are ahead of a fair amount of draws, so it wouldn't be so bad to just raise and get it in. But the fact that he gets it in with any 10 makes me a little bit less likely. I think I can also just stack him if I make improvement. The king might be a card where I can't stack him, but I think a heart I was going to. So now he bets pot again. I think he's going to feel like he's priced in, so I will just raise it up, expecting him to call. But that's a hand where against a really good player I might semi-bluff. Oh man, so he has 100 outs, but he missed them all. So we sucked out. So that's a good reason why not to raise the flop, because why get it in as a 50-50, which is basically what I would have done, when I can just go ahead and get it in as a 70% favorite. There's no sense and semi-bluffing someone who isn't folding. The whole point of a semi-bluff is if we can get our opponent to fold a better hand some of the time, then we make this huge coup. And the whole point of a semi-bluff, once again, is that if he isn't going to get away when we make our hand anyway, then why not just put less money in with our draw, give ourselves a much better price, and then when we hit, get the guy to stick his stack in anyways. So J-Nil just like hates our guts now. We're running pretty hot against him. And he's playing bad against us. So that's a nice combo. When someone, don't bet 3-bet all in with your ace-6 off on the ace-queen-10 double suited board. So one thing I will say is, if you want to go back to my 25 and 50 cent video, I think the whole concept of when to semi-bluff and when not to still very much applies in these limits. My opponents in general are not likely to keep testing me when they have nothing, so racing them off their nothing, so they won't bet me off my hand later, doesn't have nearly as much value. They're so much more likely to pay me off when I hit. Obviously that last hand was essentially a setup. I mean, he didn't need to play his king or his 10-6 suited pre-flop, but he played it totally. I would have played it the same way post-flop maybe. I probably would have just check-raised on the flop, knowing how I like to c-bet all the time. But yeah, I think our semi-bluffing ideas still apply. There's not so much use in semi-bluffing. Here we're just gonna isolate him. Well, not isolate him. We're just gonna try and pick up his small blind. I think he usually has trash here when he limps, because I think he would raise because he just like hates our guts. It's possible that he's gonna limp re-raise us, in which case we'll just fold. But we'll just take his little $2, all day. If we won $2 every hand at this limit, we would once again be billionaires or close to it. We'd have win rates of 50 poker tracker big bets per 100, which is high. So this table over here, a lot of my fishy donkeys are gone. I mean, I think this 65, KGS, NUS is probably not such a great player, but he's short, so doesn't make too big a difference. We'll see about that flop for sure. I think pocket pairs are a big part of his range, but also suited things that can't call. So he calls. When he doesn't raise that flop, this is going to be, I think, a good spot to test him. We've been somewhat out of line on this table, but it's still not going to be so easy for him to just call down with black sevens here. Bruised sevens, on the other hand. I like to call him bruised, black and blue, right? Genius. Bruised sevens, he could call again. Now he raises. Interesting. I suppose he could, just have had a flush draw. I kind of expected him to raise that on the flop, but possibly he's been watching my videos and I don't know. Well, need to call for a timeout because 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, we're almost getting like 5-1. The thing is, if he does have a flush, well, if he has a flush, we're a little bit worse than 4-1. I think we're like 15% to make our hand. Thing is, he could have flopped a full house, and we're never getting paid off. So, we're never getting paid off if he has like a 9-8 of diamonds. So I think we'll just dump it. It's so close that if he like turned over 8-9 of diamonds or something, maybe we could have done something. But in that spot, we really just can't. Pretty cool flop, obviously. Kind of interesting because I think nobody has anything. I know he doesn't have anything. B-Toch might, but I don't think Dr. Payan has everything. So I'm just gonna just slow play it one time and hope to misrepresent my hand. Ooh, I think it might have worked. And then we check the flop. He can't put us on anything. I think he has a queen. I don't think he's going to get away from it. Well, I guess maybe he did this time, but I think we picked up more money than we would have if we would have just come out betting on that flop. I think he was just trying to bluff it, but the reason I raised there, even though I think it's very possible he was trying to bluff, was he's not going to fold a draw, when I raise that. And possible that he bluffs the river anyway, but I don't want to give him a chance to get away if he does have some like marginal hand that he was willing to get it in with. Obviously it's like a pretty poor flop. B-touch hasn't been out of line, so I'm gonna bet. He calls, which is like the worst outcome. Well, not the worst, definitely. I was kind of just doing that because he played pretty straightforwardly before that. Now, obviously, I make it 2. He's not folding a pair, so I'm just gonna check and see if I can't make 2 pair of trips on the river. 6 is kind of interesting. I mean, not really. I think I lose to a 9, but we'll see. 2 draws, possibly? 2 pairs of 7s. So they weren't going anywhere. Bunch of jerks. Both had 7s. Splitting my money. That's alright. I don't think I can play it any differently. And I think that there were tons of... I mean, I could have folded King Deuce suited pre-flop, but I think there's decent value for me in these games, playing that hand. You enjoy my stack. Generally, these players with like sayings in their names, like I think like you enjoy my stack. It's like some good player trying to feign that he's a fish. So I'm gonna squeeze raisey here, and I'm gonna obviously re-raise my kings also. 10-7 suited is a good hand. 6-7-8 is a pretty poor flop. I'm gonna check, pretending like I'm gonna give up, and then I was gonna jam. But that's okay, his checking, because I think ace queen is like kind of a fairly likely hand for him. If he gets it in, I'm gonna have to call. Our 10-7 suited squeeze worked. In retrospect, I mean, there is dead money in there. No, I think it's fine. J-nil is bad, and we would like to see a lot of flops versus him, but Razy Daisy is never 4-bet bluffing us, and like I said, I think pre-flop aggression really pays handsome dividends in these games. Just because winning a pot without a flop is just a great result almost in every case, unless you have a big pair or something. So I feel fine with that, especially since we're out of position. If I was in position, I wouldn't have squeezed that from the button. If Razy and J-nil were in there already, I definitely would have just called. Especially because I'm a lot less likely to get squeezed in these games than I am in bigger games. But for now, we'll just re-raise, and re-raising people a lot makes people do funny things. It makes them play bad a lot. So if I were Dr. Payhan here, I would not pay off unless I had a jack beat. I think jack 10 and jack queen are very likely hands. I think he's almost never bluffing. Queen 10 should have been a bullet call. So J-nil, a little bit of a setup. I mean, he also didn't play well, which didn't help, but I think he played it fine. I think raising the river was probably fine. Okay, so we just squeezed Razy, and now he or she comes back and squeezes us. 5-8 suited might be a little weak to call here, but I am going to call just to see if we can get in a decent post-flop situation. Okay, so jack 4-4. I don't think Razy is the type of player that's going to double barrel, although I'm going to use a little bit of a bet sizing tell here. I think when people have ace-king, they'll bet a lot less than pot. Usually they'll bet like 40 or less, or like 35. So I am going to just fold. I was thinking about just floating, but when the bet is that big from relatively straightforward players, I think they just have us beat. 8-5 suited was probably too loose to call there. It's somewhat close just because we had just squeezed, so I don't mind just calling and seeing what can happen. I think J-Nil is getting close to playing with case money. He's busted off a few buy-ins now. He was up, so definitely tilting. And tilting players don't just like go and buy in for less unless they have to. But I think he has like $54 and didn't want to be seen buying in for the rest, so that's my read right now. I'm just going to start pounding on this table. These guys are all playing so tight. 3-5 off is too small of a hand to play, period, really, but they have to wake up if they want to play on this table. Then you see me going full jack 3 off. I like 3-5 off better. What can I say? So I would say that my initial read is somewhat right. I think these games are very similar to the 50 cents and a dollar. We haven't gotten into so many interesting spots this session. But I think it's been somewhat educational nonetheless. Some dunk-on-dunk violence up there. Looks like J-Nil doubled up, which is good for the home team. Queen 9 off is enough. Nikki Balls has been playing pretty straightforwardly. Same with Razy. Muni Thief, I don't know nothing about, but people that make the ATM thing there, Avatar, tend to be decent players. No use in slow playing here on such a dry board. I won't bet full pot, but I will bet some of the pot. Obviously, thinking to get it in, I have a lot of the reasonable 8s dominated. The only 8 we're worried about is Ace 8. Suppose I just have to bet again. Especially because it would be just like a total disaster if Barry Bob were slow playing a worse 8 than ours. I know I have to call for sure. I think I'm certainly not always ahead, but I feel fine about it. So he just has a draw. So it would have been a huge mega disaster to just check that turn, because then the river just goes check fold, and I feel like a huge idiot. But that was a spot where clearly slow playing was not correct. We got Barry Bob to stick it in well behind. I don't know. I was zoning out because I was watching an all-in hand over here. Somehow we're at the river. I'm not sure what happened. You guys can be better judges than me. I'm going to bet the minimum. See if I can get paid off by like ace or king high or a 3. Because I don't think he ever has anything. Yeah, I think one mistake people play, I think slow playing is not so bad in a lot of spots. But on an 8-8-6 two-tone flop with a... And then some people are like, I don't want to scare him off his pocket pair when the ace comes on the turn, but that's just not the right thinking. You want him to bluff the ace, you want him to think the ace is a scare card. You want him to say, perfect, now he has ace-king and I want to get the rest in with my 8-9, because one thing I see happening all the time is when two players slow play at the same time and the person with the better slow playing hand doesn't get any value. Like, that is like one of the biggest disasters you can make in Hold'em, because you're not going to make trips or better so often, and when you have such a strong hand like I had, like trips with the big old kicker there, you can't be worried about slow playing, especially because so many hands can catch up. The 9s. I'm just going to call and play a flop. We get squeezed, but Nikki's been so straightforward that I feel fine just folding here. I don't think he just came alive. And that's kind of what I was thinking too, that if I squeezed, I didn't really want to play. I mean, 9s will be ahead of his pushing range, but just barely probably. So, good result for us. We get away from the worst hand for $7. Ace. Oh. Now we're miserable because J-Nil was such a pleasure to have at the table. Now he's busta. And we're left with certainly what looks like all regulars. It's gone. People that come off the wait list are usually decent players, but we're just about ready to wrap up the video anyway, so whatever. Okay, our pocket eights. Now it's an easy decision. I was going to c-bet, incidentally, because I think that FMA 8 or Queen S would be forced to have a queen if they wanted to see a showdown at the river. And then, so I mean, sad strange, but I feel like in that spot I'm almost playing heads up against 65k GS NUS or whatever, because I think that he's the only one that's going to show down against me without a queen. And the rest of the guys are just going to have to pay an awful lot to see a showdown with Queen Jack, if they do have that, or like Ace 10 or something. Muni Thief, certainly possible. He's a decent player. We'll continue to punish You Enjoy My Stacks for trying to open up our small blind. You'd figure that someday he's going to do that and call, but today is not the day that he will. So I will just say I firmly believe that high preflop aggression is the only way to play against regulars in these games. But in the right cases, I think I'll end this video off by talking about those right cases, because it's something I talked about in my 510 video that people seem to talk about. One of the right cases would be with hands that have very marginal value with the players involved in the pot. Like, we know Nicky's almost always folding. We don't know much about Elzino, but presumably he's a regular buying in for a full stack. He was on like a waiting list, so and our hand has no value beyond trying to win pre-flop. So that's a hand great for a squeeze. On the other hand, if I had like 7-8 suited and it was J-nil in the big blind, I think that would be almost a disaster to 3-bet, because yeah, sure, I win the pot a decent amount of time, but we would much rather just invite him in with a hand. No, not a disaster with 8-7, but I think it would be better just to call, because we want to invite him in with a hand that can make a pair when we make a straight and is going to stack off, or whatever. Similarly with a hand like Ace-Jack, if the button raised and I were in the small blind with Ace-Jack and J-nil was in the big blind, I would definitely just call, because in that case, essentially I'm also turning my Ace-Jack into a bluff against the button, which isn't that bad. But if we force J-nil out with like an Ace-3 that he was going to call with, that's a huge mistake. Or like a Jack-9 or Jack-8, because he's not going anywhere on a Jack-5-4 board when he has Jack-9 and I have Ace-Jack. We're just getting it in, and I get to have the rest of the money. So yeah, I think that I just love just calling with Ace-Jack there. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but I think that 3-betting only your monsters and totally marginal hands is going to be a strat. I mean, it's an exploitable strategy, but these guys don't know how to exploit it. They are not comfortable 4-bet bluffing it. Still, it doesn't seem like at this limit, just like it was at 50 cents a dollar. So we don't really need to worry about balancing our range. And balancing ranges is like an overdone concept anyway. And lower stakes games. Okay, so Muni Thief. I'm going to squeeze both of these. Not because, but yeah, just because I just don't think that these guys. I think Muni Thief can possibly make a play, because he's shown some squeezability earlier. But if they're going to open this wide range on the button and never 4-bet bluff me, then they're just going to be in bad shape, because I just get to win so many pots without any resistance. And so now we're just feared, on this table. Guys feel like they can't do anything. They probably feel a little bit handcuffed. Pocket 3 is a hand I definitely just like a call with when we don't have squeezy players behind us, because it's not a very high variance hand once we hit the flop. Kind of interesting now. I'm going to get a little bit better than 10-1 against Nicky, who almost certainly has a very strong hand. Muni Thief was just re-raised by me pre-flop, so Nicky might be in for a little bit of a bluff from him if he's capable of it. But I am going to call, because I think I have implied odds against him, because I think his hand range is strongly weighted towards big pairs, and our implied odds are like 11-ish or 12-1, so and it helps when you can just make a set right away. He bets 50. Kind of interesting. Just gonna jam it. If he has a big pair, I don't expect him to fold. And he doesn't. Yeah, I was gonna call in case he had like an ace king, because his bet was kind of small, but I didn't want, if he did have a hand like jacks or kings, or queens, I didn't want a scare card to come off on the turn. Even though it'd be somewhat unreasonable to put me on an ace, given that action, I think it doesn't really matter. Okay, so king queen suited. I'm just gonna call this one. It's strong enough that I don't want to turn it into a bluff, and I can make a ton of really good hands. Oh well, we're running up on time here. He checks. I'm gonna bet just to build the pot. I think that I can take it down if he has a hand worse than an ace a decent amount of time, and of course I can improve to the nuts a fair amount. King, I'll just check and hope to be good. And I am. Interesting, because I think I was going to bet again on the river, and he did have the sixes that time, so certainly a good result. So, I mean, basically we've just totally crushed it today. We ran pretty hot, obviously, but I think I really like these games textures. Okay, well I think I'm basically just going to call it a video here. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was somewhat educational, and you know, as sort of a final note, I want to say that the adjustment I would make from 50 cent a dollar to these games would be to 3-bet a little bit more pre-flop. I think a lot of the other concepts apply, and I encourage those of you who are only playing 50 cents a dollar but who are rolled for a bigger game, maybe take a shot, because I think that this is a game where you know, you guys could show a pretty decent profit. I won't leave you guys in suspense. I will play out this last ace-8 suited hand, which I think might end in me getting stacked, but we'll see. Well, not stacked, but maybe doubling someone up. So I'll call for the extra 5 for sure. Funny flop, of course, because if he's going to jam, if he folds, we'll get 2 to 1. Oh, that's fine. Alrighty. So that's a video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll be looking forward to helping you guys out with any feedback on the forums. Next time you see me, we'll be moving up to 2-4. Bye-bye, guys.